6:03 is the time on the Big 550 KTRS. John Grayson alongside Dennis Young, President and CEO of Intner Architects, and we're bringing you issues in education. Intner, of course, kind enough to found Issues in Education. So let's talk a little bit about that, Dennis, before we bring our next guest in. Give us some of the philosophy behind this program.
Well, it's really about providing a meaningful voice to educational leaders, because there's so many important issues that are going on, and a lot of times you try to avoid the media because you get a question thrown at you, you don't get any time to answer it. And it becomes more about the question and about the answer. So Issues in Education has gone national. It's been National School Board in Denver. And these kinds of programs are just outstanding. They have the listening audience really understand what the critical issues are of education. So thank you both for being here.
Yeah, we have Dr. Natalie DeWeese, Board President of the Wentzville School District, and Dr. Curtis Kane, Superintendent of Wentzville School District. Thank you both.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
It's great to see you. And Wentzville is representative. We talked with Brentwood last hour about the issues with a small school district. Wentzville has seen incredible growth. Dr. Kane, what do we mean when we talk about the incredible growth in Wentzville?
So in the year 2000, there were just under 6,000 students in the Wentzville School District. Right now we have close to 16,400 students. So we've seen more than our fair share of growth. There's no question about that.
Bit of a jump. And Dr. DeWeese, that presents some obvious challenges just in terms of space.
Yes.
How do you deal?
So I think one of our challenges is we can't ever focus on class sizes. We have to focus on classrooms. And so getting ahead of it and making sure that we provide our kids just a really good learning environment, that our teachers have space to teach in, to put all of their resources, and just keeping our community really educated on what our needs are and why we continue to build. So just, getting out there and we're educating. So
well, in a fast-growing district, it's not very static. It's very dynamic, and it seems like you're always having to evaluate the alignment of space to where the numbers of students are. Mm-hmm. So how do you do that and get out in front of it to have enough of a long-term forecast?
I think the key is frequency and just being as objective and clear with what we have in terms of the data. We have to know and just embrace the fact that our facts are going to change. And so our responses have to change as well. The change is fine as long as the one constant is this. The classroom is the reason that we have a school district, and we can never, ever, ever lose sight of that. As long as we keep that as our North Star, we're going to be fine. But we have to constantly reevaluate where we are, understand we're going to have to change and move forward.
As you're doing those evaluations, Dennis, as you're doing those evaluations, does it get as granular as going block by block and figuring out where people are moving and how big the families are?
It literally gets that granular. There's no question about that. And we have to do so at least every 2 years in order to be aware of what's truly going on within the school district. Since my arrival in July of 2013, we've had 70 plats for subdivision growth. 70 plats for subdivision growth. So our growth is unlike anything that most folks will see over the course of their career. And it's a challenge, but it's one that we're more than willing to embrace.
Now, as you make those alignments of space, does that change the grade structure at all? You go from a K-5 or 6 and adjust that again?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what we did this past year was actually over the course of the summer, we moved from a K-5 format to a K-6 format in our elementary buildings to free up space that was desperately needed in potentially three of our middle schools as well. Again, us being very fluid in terms of what it means in terms of where grades are, but not losing sight of what actually happens from a curricular perspective within the classroom.
So how do you get the community support? Because when they get used to a certain grade level configuration, that becomes their school pride. How do you do that?
I think we, as a board, did our research on what was going to be the best approach to addressing that growth, and then pulled in our stakeholders. So we put a committee together and asked those really pivotal, important voices in our community and at each school to come together, look at the data, look at the research, look at what's going on in our community, look where all that growth is happening. And they had input in it when they had a voice. They were able to kind of poke holes in the plan and tell us what wasn't going to work and what was going to work. And so by the time it came to the board, our community had a good understanding of why we were doing what we were doing. Well, with some apprehension, but, they understood.
You all must do a very good job with community engagement, because you're growing so fast and making so many changes. If there is resistance and you can't execute some of your plans, say for 2-3 years, you have a real dilemma on your hands, and then you're behind the curve.
every day counts. When it comes to our growth, literally every year counts. With our boundary changes, one of the key points of success was this. The decision was announced in December, and then we got out of the way. And this was a very smart move. We got out of the way, and we let buildings do what they do best, which is build culture and community within their geographic region. And that's the reason we're seeing the success that we are seeing this fall.
Yeah. And going from a K-5 to a K-6 like that, you have another challenge involved in just keeping the classrooms as updated as you said, because the 6th grade classroom isn't the same as a 5th grade classroom. So how do you meet those needs as you're pushing kids back into a different building?
The key is curricular fidelity. The expectation is very, very simple. The curricular experience that students are having this year in 6th grade is the exact same that they had last year. Are there lockers in the hallways? No. But the curricular experience in terms of what is happening from an instructional perspective is to remain the same as students experienced just last year.
And I think that space that we've freed up in our middle schools is going to allow us to expand some areas that we've been wanting to expand for a long time. They've been in our plan, and we haven't been able to address them because we've been working on that growth piece, and making sure kids have a place to go. So,
well, as you're focused on getting that community support, you can't overlook the certified and non-certified staff because they're a key part of making any plan work. So how do you engage them because their cheese is getting moved all the time? How do you get that kind of support?
You understand the person first and foremost before you really focus on the professional. And people will do their best when they feel comfortable with the surroundings that they're working with, specifically the brick and mortar space, but also the people that they're working with as well. We've been able to add late start professional development options for our elementary buildings as well. So we now have late start options for our elementary, our middle, and our high school staff as well. And this allows people to come together, collaborate, professionally develop and train, and have professional dialogue and discourse with some frequency, literally every other week over the course of a given month. It's those small pieces that come together that people really do appreciate, and it just builds momentum in terms of what we're seeing in our district.
When you change those start times like that, does that put more pressure on or take pressure off of making sure that the kids are where they're supposed to be on time, especially kids who ride buses?
We all transition. So now everyone in the district,
everybody
in the district starts 2 hours later than they normally would for a school day. So there's consistency in terms of format, thought, and overall design of what we're doing.
Excellent. From the Wentzville School District, we have Dr. Curtis Kane, the superintendent, and Dr. Natalie DeWeese, who is the board president of Wentzville School District. So, as Dennis had alluded to, you've got the professionals who work in the schools. They have their needs. You've got the parents who have their needs. How important is it to keep those lines of communication going between the two of them so that they understand each other?
Very. It's very important. Just listening to them, surveying them, and looking at that feedback and deciding what are the next steps going to be, to address it. I think a true strength in the Wentzville School District is the sense of community. Everybody's in it together. We know we still have a ways to go to address what our needs are, but we have the right people in the right places, to make that happen. So.
And just to put the point on it, you dedicated 2 schools in 2 days this year?
Yes.
To give you an idea how dynamic things are, we opened one elementary building on August 14th, another elementary building on August 15th, and literally on September 12th, the board said, we know that we have to get ahead of this, and so on April 3rd, we're going to put a no tax increase on the ballot because we know we have to look toward the future. Just that quickly, it's something that we know that we have to do.
So, and again, that makes it all the more challenging when you're dealing with something that's got no new tax dollars coming in. How do you manage that?
First of all, it takes a very dedicated group of individuals to serve on a board of education of a district that's growing at our rate. There are tremendous spheres of influence, tremendous perspectives, and difference of perspectives that are constantly surrounding everything that we do. And so really, I think that one of the starting points is them having an understanding of how dynamic and how challenging it is to serve as board members. And it's much easier said than done. And you go from there. It's great people. That's the secret to the sauce of the Wentzville School District. We have great folks. We have great communities. We have great staff. We have great students, all coming together to focus on what's best for kids.
Well, I also hear, your educational programs are fantastic. You have advanced placement classes, the early childhood education component. And with all the puzzle pieces moving and growing as fast as they are, to maintain those kind of course offerings and quality of education is what you're really there to provide. I just don't know how you keep on top of all that.
The classroom is the reason we have a school district, and we want their their hopes, their wishes, their dreams to drive what they ultimately do, not a lack of preparation or a lack of opportunity. It's truly what they're truly choosing to do. That's what's going to drive what they do in the future. And
it seems like Wentzville is emblematic, Dennis, of a lot of the things that we've talked about with the other school district members that we've had on the show so far today. So let's get into some of those issues when you have a large and diverse population like what Wentzville does. You also have large and diverse needs when it comes to high school students especially. So what kinds of offerings are there for people who want to focus on what we've grown to call the more magnet sorts of education? How much can Wentzville offer when you're dealing with all of these other issues?
It is a challenge. So we have well over 27, 28 advanced placement courses that are offered. We're very proud of what we've been able to do in terms of offerings with our STEM courses, in terms of Project Lead the Way. And we're also pushing a new program called Ignite, where we're literally allowing students to go into the world of work and have an understanding of what that means. We have more traditional career and technical education programming as well. So we have a wide array. I think the key is that we just open as many curricular doors as we possibly can for students. It does present challenges, but it's a worthy endeavor.
And I think we are just expanding the partnerships that we try to build with the businesses around us in the community, and working to build some partnerships with other districts around that, so that kids can really have those hands-on career experiences and really start to get a handle on where they want to head after high school.
You don't have to have everything everywhere.
You don't have to have everything everywhere, yes. So.
Well, Dr. DeWeese, your background is somewhat interesting.
Yeah.
You might expand on it from an educational standpoint.
Yeah, so I have spent the last 16 years in education as a teacher for 7 years, and then university coach, and then the last 5 have been as a building principal in the Francis Howell School District. So, yeah.
You've been at all the different levels of
I have.
What a great perspective.
Yeah.
Right. And how, Dr. Kane, as a superintendent, how do you take advantage of the experience that somebody like Natalie has had and work that into, again, keeping those lines of communications open between the teachers, the students, and the parents?
Well, we really work to make sure we have consistent communication with all of our board. What Dr. DeWeese has is just a complete understanding of what it is. She understands the notion, this entire endeavor of what we do in terms of public education. And so in terms of background knowledge, there aren't really any questions, because she knows. She just absolutely knows. She's living it and breathing it every day. And she's not only skilled in terms of what she does as a professional, but also as a board member as well.
It's a pretty good guy to work for.
He is.
Work with, I should say.
You plan on staying on the board, I hope.
Well, we'll see what the voters say.
Well, that's true. That is a tough part, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's so much that's challenging about all of this. And is there a time? Do you see a time in the future when you're going to start to see the top of that curve? You started smiling when I said that.
There will be a time. It will not be in the short term or even medium term future. Every projection suggests that we'll be a district of around 22,000, probably by the year 2026, 27.
And you're where now?
We're at 16,000, almost 400.
400. Don't forget the 400. That's a whole elementary school.
They're really
right
smart
there.
kids, those 400. Some of the brightest. But yeah, so you think it's going to top out around 22,000?
That's what our demographic suggestions are suggesting. And the key with us, as it relates to our demography and growth in our district, we have to measure twice and cut once.
Wow.
Right. Keep measuring to make sure that we know what we believe we know.
How does that process happen?
We actually partner with third-party objective folks that can come in, and this is what they do. They are professional demographers, and they go in, they look at live birth data, a number of other variables as well, and help us triangulate and figure out what, in fact, is going to happen in terms of growth in the district.
Yeah, and how much, I'm sure that the impression that we've given so far is that most of this growth is coming simply from people moving in. Are families getting bigger? Is it all coming in from new population?
So as it relates to construction and what we are seeing, we actually have seen a slight incline in terms, or growth in terms of the number of students per household. At one point, roughly 0.67 students per household actually came to the Wentzville School District. It's closer to 0.72 or 0.74 at this point in time.
Because if you've got a lot of 22-year-old couples that are moving in, they're going to have kids eventually, so that's going to help that curve top out.
That's part of our growth, yes.
There's a lot of dirt still moving in Wentzville.
Yeah, right, and it's going to be that way, it sounds like, for quite some time.
Yeah. And ample green space in the district as well, so there's room for growth.
Well, some of your planning strategies, do they include centers? Are they really independent schools with grades K through 6, or do you with pre-K? How does all that work?
I think, well, as it relates to pre-K right now, we do have a single early childhood center. I think what's important for us is to never take variables off the table. It's important that we are willing to sometimes actively consider and embrace a number of opportunities. We're ultimately going to go down one path, but it's important that we consider as many variables as possible.
Right.
Well, it's fascinating work, and again, it's a very dynamic place to watch, so it's going to be exciting to see what happens just over these next few years in Wentzville. And Dr. Curtis Kane, Superintendent of the Wentzville School District, and Dr. Natalie DeWeese, Board President of the Wentzville School District, thank you so much, both of you, for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you as part of Issues in Education, which will continue in just a couple of minutes. John Grayson sitting alongside Dennis Young, President and CEO of Vintner Architects, as Issues in Education continues on the Big 550 KTRS.